Right, our next guest was the subject of a very interesting article published in the Herald over the weekend about New Zealand's tall poppy syndrome in business culture. Lani Fogelberg, she's founder of Fogelberg Consulting, says that hard-working Kiwis who have acquired wealth through entrepreneurship and business are harshly scrutinised for their success, which is chasing innovation overseas. Lani joins us now. Lani, welcome to the platform. Thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, Lani, just a little bit of background of you. Though I don't want to be ageist, you are in your early 30s and you have basically made yourself.
To a certain extent, I don't necessarily believe in the phrase self-made, but yeah, I suppose essentially.
Okay. And what are your businesses in general terms worth and doing at the moment?
So the work I do is predominantly with high integrity, high ambition business owners across Australia and New Zealand who want to essentially achieve a different level of performance that they're currently getting. So I work with about a dozen different clients at a time and in a very fluid manner help them get to where they want to be.
Wow, sounds interesting. Is that more difficult to do in New Zealand than it is in Australia?
In terms of help the businesses get to where they want to be, or the work that I do itself?
In terms of businesses getting where they want to be, if you like, the culture and how the different cultures of the two countries regard success or indeed aspiration.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think in New Zealand, it's relatively easy for a business to succeed if they're willing to go the extra mile, because business in New Zealand, the business environment in New Zealand is a lot slower than what it is in larger countries like Australia or America, where it moves much more quickly. We also have an increasingly legislative environment as well, which makes it easy to kind of compete with others if you're able to kind of front foot increasing legislation. And we can often get predictions of what that's going to look like from our Australian neighbours as well. So I think it is relatively easy to succeed in business in New Zealand, but of course notwithstanding any other significant external factors, like obviously global pandemic.
Yeah.
Industries that have obviously been very specifically impacted by that.
Lani, you basically got going here and you're still here. If you had your time again, would you choose New Zealand as the place to start your journey from or not?
No way. It's such an unsupportive environment. And, it's similar in Australia as well. I recall listening to a podcast a year or two ago, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but it was an American podcast, and this guy was saying like, oh, I hear in Australia and New Zealand, down under, there's this thing called tall poppy syndrome, and it's like when someone's doing well at something and their peers and people in the community cut them down, and it's like this weird phenomenon. And so that really drove home to me that this is a very down under thing. And I think in places like the United States, it does obviously exist everywhere to a certain extent, but it is far kinder in other countries. And even where there's a lot of tech and a lot of innovation, places like Silicon Valley, failure is almost championed.
Because it teaches you so much. Failure teaches you so much. But here, if you fail, you are absolutely destroyed. So you're saying you wouldn't start out again in New Zealand because you believe that we're not good at encouraging people, but you've made it here. You've made it here.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
are a success.
Yeah, and it's quite funny because I've had a lot of trolls saying, oh, no one wants you here, so just go. But obviously, and I think the articles like the one that came out in the Herald are very limiting in the sense that they don't show the whole conversation that was had. And we spoke about it at kind of all different levels, like this tall poppy stuff doesn't just exist in the business and entrepreneurial world. I said to someone this morning, a group of friends might have, a few women, a few men, one might get a pay rise, and that's not cool in that group of friends. So this exists at every kind of level. And the crap that I have had to put up with throughout my 20s from grown adults. Like, because when you're in your 20s, you're a kid. You don't know what the hell you're doing. And, you're going out and you're putting your best foot forward. And, if you're lucky up until then, you've had a good life. And you find that there are grown adults in this country who are just dicks.
Give me some examples. You don't have to name names. But clearly I can feel from you that, man, you're still carrying this stuff. As I said, you do not have to name names, but give us some examples.
Yeah. And I remember distinctly someone seeing the house that I lived in 9 or 10 years ago, and then completely changing the way that they behave towards me in the workplace, because the house that I lived in was not the average house. It was a lovely home. It was a larger than average home with some luxury features. And I just remember thinking as a 23-year-old, because I was so naive then, because I think the best of everyone, and I still do to a certain extent, right? And you don't think that as a 23-year-old, or you don't know that there are grown adults who will actually change their behaviour to become quite negative towards you as a result of some...
Because the perception was that you didn't deserve it, you were too young to be that successful.
Something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was this more predominant amongst, I don't know, old white men than women or other members of the community? Where did you feel most of your tall poppyism coming from?
I do hate to say it, but at all levels. Yeah, men and women equally, all ages, because there's people the same age as you, and you can even go back to, and this is something that I'm really interested to explore more, childhood, right? I was bullied a lot at primary school. I was a nerd. I was the teacher's pet. I got good grades, etc. And in hindsight, when you look back, you're like, why are you bullied in that situation at school? And really, it's because you're sticking out, you're succeeding, you're accomplishing the aim of being at school, which is to succeed in your education that you're getting. And so, where it comes from, I don't know, but it happens from people of all ages and at all stages.
I can remember some years ago when Eleanor Catton, you've heard of Eleanor Catton, the writer?
Yeah.
She won an award and she went overseas to a book fair and basically dumped all over John Key and the national government at a book fair. And I called her on the radio an ungrateful hooer. And I was accused, in fact, I've literally got a cartoon in my office that Tom Scott drew of me with a lawnmower saying there is no tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand, marching through the poppies. And Eleanor Catton, and I've got to say I looked at that and of course I reflected on that because I kind of got semi-cancelled as much as you could get cancelled back then for that. And I wasn't. I was just saying what I thought in that particular instance of Eleanor Catton. I still think she's one of the greatest living writers we have, but that kind of gets lost in all the static. It also seems to me that in the world of social media and online, and I literally get this every day and I know other people who do, people are really keen to just be nasty. There's something going on in the modern day psyche.
There really is. And one of the stigmas, I suppose, that I'm really keen to bust is the fact that all people who are perceived to be successful, and when I say successful, I mean in the financial sense that society has led us to believe equates success, which obviously is not true. Success has nothing to do with money. But I think in all of the people that I know who have had an element of financial success, they only want to see other people succeed, and they're all just flawed humans like me. So there's a platform, one social media platform, TikTok, where I'm really, I'm finding my feet on the platform a little bit, but really wanting to break the stigma that people in my position, we don't think that we're just nuts. I still, and I say this online, I still get up and brush my teeth in the morning. I still have, laundry that I have to do. I still deal with just all the day-to-day mundane, stuff of life. It's just that there's some, other different stuff that I also deal with, in business and so forth. And generally people who have achieved an element of business success or financial success or whatever, none of us are walking around, with our chests puffed out thinking that we're, the next best thing since sliced bread. Like we're all just living our lives, doing our thing. And so on the flip side of that, also really making an effort to start the conversation about financial success and some of the material things that sometimes go along with that if people so choose, and the fact that it doesn't make you happy and it doesn't bring you fulfillment. And I emphasize that by sharing a story of when I was in hospital in 2020 being told that the physical pain I was in was possibly psychological when in fact I had appendicitis. And it's like, when you're in and out of the ED department over a period of weeks in Auckland City Hospital, the thought of all the nice stuff you've got at home does not make that situation any better. No,
it doesn't
right?
take away the pain.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
look, do you mind, have you got a bit longer? Because I'm finding this conversation absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's broaden it out to a recent instance of I don't know, cultural conflict or cancellation. I note that Simon Henry's company, his chemical company, has delisted on the New Zealand Stock Exchange on Friday, only going to be traded in Australia now. Nadia Lim, he said something about their prospectus. He put it incredibly badly, but he had a point in a financial sense about the integrity or the fundamentals of the New Zealand share market and New Zealand investing. And I think what Simon Henry was trying to say is be careful of investing in a company that relies on a celebrity endorsement. When you looked at the performance of My Food Bag, which had cost its investors $240 million, and his rather boring chemical company, which had doubled or more than doubled its investors' money on the NZX in the same time. But the baying mob came for Simon Henry. Mainstream media wrote stories, hired academics to say, is this apology correct? And, is this academically a proper apology? Did the courier turn up on time? And basically his company hounded from the NZX. What did you make of that flow of events? What were your thoughts?
I think it was, and I guess, double-edged sword, obviously. But if he wanted to say, what you just said with regards to the company's performance, he probably could have said that quite constructively.
I agree.
As opposed to taking digs, because unfortunately,
But it seems to me he apologised, albeit rather poorly. But no one let go of him. It was like blood in the water. Let's just gnaw at this bone.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because he was wealthy and successful in business.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. There's probably an element of that to it. I think the issues surrounding that are far more three-dimensional than just the issue at hand, right? So if he was making a comment around My Food Bag's financial performance, it's public, that's one thing. But because he delved into some more personal comments, which are of a very topical nature at the moment, because obviously over recent years there's been a huge amount of dialogue around women in business, women in the workplace. Obviously there was the big public case with Russell McVeigh a few years ago.
It looks like there's a very public case involving Television New Zealand that's unfolding as we speak, to be honest, as well.
Yeah. So I don't think it would be nice to just look at it in isolation, right? And say, well, hey, from purely a commercial point of view, were these comments justified? But we can't because of all of the kind of issues that sit around the peripheral of his comment. And I do think as a woman, and I actually don't get on the whole like female in business bandwagon that often.
Well, it strikes me from the research I've done, and you are not saying I'm good because I'm a woman and hear me roar. No. You're just saying I'm a business person. This is what I do, and you seem to be pretty good at it.
Thank you. And don't get me wrong, there are instances where there's massive inequality, and I don't want to go into that conversation, obviously. But there are some very real instances, and I have been on the receiving end of a lot of gender-based comments throughout my career, and they are extremely unpleasant to deal with.
I've been on the end of gender-based comments for most of my career too, to be against men. Yeah,
correct. So it exists on both sides. So it's because of the nature of the comments, I feel like we can't look at what he said in isolation as purely a commercial comment, right? Because it has highlighted, and there is, I experienced this in a couple of, for crying out loud, from male executive members and things like that. And so it is quite, it is quite wrong. So I do, there's obviously the comment side of things. From the apology point of view, I'm a very pragmatic, very kind of no BS kind of person, and if I was on that board, I would be immediately fronting up and saying, hey, look, our CEO effed up. This is what we're going to do about it. Communication and transparency generally hurts no one, and I think that could have been handled a lot better.
Well, don't forget he was the majority shareholder, so the board was largely going to reflect whatever he was feeling, and I imagine, to be honest, he was feeling under siege. And also probably male reaction or human reaction got a bit defensive and got a bit angry at what was coming down the pike at him, which he should have, to be honest, expected. But as I think it's a loss for New Zealand that you cannot now buy that company's shares on the New Zealand share market there in Australia. And if you choose which company I would have rather seen fold up, it would be my food bag. And I am not a financial advisor, but all my friends in economics and chairs say it's still a dog. Doesn't matter what it uses to sell its image, obviously. Look, I want to get back to the start of this. You said if you had your time again, you would have left New Zealand. I don't mean to get down on you. That's really sad, because I think that will encourage a lot of young, talented New Zealanders to leave New Zealand, and I don't want them to. I would like them to stay. I think we're a great country. We are dynamic, we're small, we're agile, we're full of great people. How do we stop people leaving? How do we make you feel differently so you say, stay here, this is the place to make it?
And this is the thing, and I had so many, about 2,000 messages since Saturday, so I've barely scratched the surface in terms of reading them, but one thing that really stuck out to me was the number of school teachers who have messaged me, which is both great but also sad, because they expressed a deep concern for what, their tamariki were going through or potentially about to go through as they, become of age, etc. And I don't want to encourage people to leave, because going back to my comments earlier, it's actually very easy to succeed in New Zealand if you, have a level of privilege. And when I say that, obviously you've got support, family support, a good roof over your head, education and so forth. It's very easy to succeed from that. What I want to see happen is a change of dialogue in our most prolific information sources. I spoke about this recently at the M2 Summit, where we get two very conflicting pieces of dialogue coming through in the mainstream media. I'm going to say it. This was when I was talking about pragmatism and the fact that we actually need to, put ego and stuff like that aside and just take a pragmatic look at what's effing the country up, right? And I've got so many thoughts on this, which we probably won't be able to cover today. We've
still got time, and to be honest, can I invite you back regularly? Because I am really enjoying this dialogue, and it is a perspective that I have not seen explored before. Let's just get back. Let's start exploring that. You talked about the mainstream media and, if you like, the narrative there. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons the platform exists is that I felt the same disquiet, and so many people contacted me and said, what's happened here? What's happened to the idea of impartiality and inquiry that does not have an overlay, to be honest, of culture war to it, that isn't about being on or off, liking or disliking, but saying, let's explore ideas. Do you think the mainstream media are responsible for, if you like, degrading the quality of civic debate?
I'm going to put it out there, and I'm probably going to get vilified for it. But yeah, it's there's. Let me just collate my thoughts so that I can say something that's actually cohesive. There's very there are groups of people in the country that the media tends to portray in a way that's designed specifically to make others be envious of them. And that's a very destructive feeling to be encouraging. And what I'm essentially getting at is they're perpetrating or encouraging tall poppy syndrome.
And I would say that mainstream media often perpetrate the politics of envy in this country.
Envy politics. And look, Andre Rao from M2 magazine, have you met Andre before?
No, I haven't. I'd love to. Yeah.
Neat guy, very intelligent guy. Got a lot of time for him. And we've spoken a lot recently because I spoke at an event that they put on a few weeks ago. And it's what I was getting to about pragmatism and the envy politics that's out there. They're like I said earlier, they're so unnecessary because a lot of the people that are in those, positions, whether it's wealth or success or whatever, they're just out there living their lives, doing their thing, and probably making a bloody good contribution to the community. I've seen a few people troll me that, why doesn't she get rid of her Ferrari and give the money to whatever? And it's like, well, man, the amount of tax that's generated as a result of my business
your work,
and things like that, but then also the contribution. Like if there are businesses that exist and have survived as a result of the work that we did during the pandemic, then that's all of the jobs and all of the food on the table that's been kept. And that's just me. I mean, there are tons of people out there doing stuff like I do. So there really just needs to be a bit more transparency in the media and a bit more voice for the people in positions like me, because we've actually got the ability to make a significant contribution to the betterment of New Zealand's not just economic but social future as well.
Yeah.
And our social future at the moment is screwed, basically.
What makes you say that? Look, it's such a fascinating conversation. I want to throw something else at you. The Prime Minister overseas, and good on her for selling our beef and lamb and our tourism. She gets to give the commencement speech at Harvard, which is no mean feat. It's a great honour. But in that speech, she says, when I read things I don't like on social media, I think of people in ill food who don't know anything about personal hygiene, sitting in ill-fitting superhero in dark, and she vilifies en masse a whole bunch of people. And I've got to say, I liked a whole lot of that speech, but I didn't like that part. That was the kind of, if you like, binary on, off, like, not like, that I think is damaging our society.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, people are not, like, society's not black and white. It's, we've got all of this beautiful, this whole range of people in New Zealand, right, with all different backgrounds, all different abilities, all different experiences, all different thoughts. And just because someone says something that someone else doesn't like, it doesn't necessarily make them
the devil incarnate.
A person of, what is it? Poor personal hygiene, wearing a baggy superhero. Yeah. So it's a lot less black and white than that, right? And in my position, like if I'm being a dick, like I want someone to tell me, right?
Yeah.
Because like I don't want to be a dick, and I really pride myself on being a relatable person, a down to earth person. I talk about again going back to TikTok. I talk about the fact that I buy secondhand clothes and stuff like that because I want to.
You are never going to get until you sell the Ferrari. No one is buying the secondhand clothes story. Okay.
Oh yeah, exactly right. And it's like I know that I can't win in a lot of respects because people just see the Ferrari and they're like she's a rich wanker or whatever, right? And whatever, the people that are sitting there at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning trolling my personal Instagram account, and I'm sort of enjoying a nice quiet morning with my boyfriend, I'm like, man, there's a lot of much more valuable stuff that you could be doing with your time at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, spending it with your children, or reading a book or something. But, there are people out there doing that because I irritate them, apparently.
So now I want you to walk it back, Lani. This is the whole point. Can you please tell young entrepreneurial and invigorated New Zealanders that we can change New Zealand, they should stay here, and we can change the world?
We can. We just need more people to join the conversation. And one of the words that got in my inbox a lot, I could see all the notifications, was the word brave. You're so brave for speaking out. You're so brave for taking one for the team. I knew that those comments would elicit a lot of hatred because obviously the nature of the beast, right? But having said that, there are so many people out there who have acknowledged that this is an issue in New Zealand and we need to do something about it. And I just hope that other people can feel the confidence within themselves and the support that they have around them, and from people like me, to step up, do something about it. And if we can't do something about it coming from this end, then we need to make sure that we support our young people to build their confidence and resilience, and say that, yes, you can stay in New Zealand, you can succeed, you are a whole human being with everything that you've already got within you. You don't need to listen to what these people are saying about you. Go out there, be a good son, be a good daughter, be a good employee, employer, and contribute to making New Zealand a better place in the future.
Thank you.
That's all right.
We don't have to get the news, but I'm expected to, because it's kind of like a radio station. That was a fascinating conversation. We've got to do this again, and if you're interested in coming on and hosting a show for a bit on the platform and engaging some people, we are so willing to help, because I think you've hit on something and you are speaking common sense without chopping down any poppies. Hey, what year's the Ferrari? I saw it.
It's 07. It's 15 years old. Yeah.
Same as the Range Rover. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Lani. That was absolutely awesome. I'm sure we're going to get a ton of feedback on that conversation here on the platform. That is Lani Fogelberg, entrepreneur, self-made woman, I think patriotic New Zealander, and someone who has got an idea of how to fix some of the problems we're facing in this country.